Alright, so this time we have the new motor from RotorX, the RX1404-3600KV. In addition to this motor, they sent me another new one, the RX1107-7600KV, and they also sent a couple of the old ones, RX1306-4100KV and the 1407-2800KV. This one's based on the Tornado T1 from Brother Hobby, and the RX1306 is based off of a T motor. So thanks RotorX for sending these motors for review, so I can show it to my YouTube viewers and share all the results of the testing. So thanks for sending the samples. So here are the motors. This one's the 1404-3600KV. So that's interesting KV. Most likely it's aimed at 3-inch props. I would say on 3S and perhaps even on 4S. So I'll put it on thrust stand and see what kind of numbers it's pulling as far as amps and what thrust is producing. So we can see how it compares to other motors of similar size. And this one's the 1107. So this one's higher KV, 7600. So that would probably be on 2S for 2S, maybe on 3S for some of the props. So interesting motor with somewhat taller stator, 7 millimeters. This one's the one that's based off a T motor, and this one's a size that hasn't been that popular lately, 1306, 4100 KV. So kind of a high KV, possibly good on 3S, on 3-inch props. This one's the Brother Hobby, based off the Brother Hobby T1. I actually tested this motor and I reviewed it some months ago, so check out the link video there for a full review and test on that motor. So it's gonna be the same. It's the same, basically the same T1 with the 2800 kV value. So really good motor. This is a really good motor. This is a very successful series from Brother Hobby, very popular, these 1407s, and they're pretty solid motors, so really good performance on all these T1 1407 motors. In addition to the motors, they also went ahead and sent me a few of the props, some of the new props and some of the older props. This one is the T-mount 3-inch tri-blade, and this one's the RX3044TXSB. So this one mounts to these motors with the 2 screws, so it's like the T-style mount. They also sent me the one with the regular shaft, basically the same propeller, but for the standard M5 shaft. And this one's the RX3044 TR, I believe. They also sent me this other new one that they have. It's a 1940 RX 1940x3, and some of the ones that are already known. This one's the 3025 RX 3025, and the 2535 XSB. This one you can use it in 2-blade configuration or 4-blade configuration. I've been using these props in some of my micro motors test. This one I've been using, and also this 3025. So really good props. They're some of the best performing props. And they also sent me this one, which is the original. This is the original RX3020. This is pretty much the first prop that was purposely designed to work with these T-style motors. It was cloned by other companies, but this was the original, and RotorX was the company that designed this prop, and then everybody else copied them. So just a little bit of history on RotorX. Is that back in the day when everybody was into 5-inch frames, 5-inch quads, we were all gaga over the 2205 motors and 5-inch frames. At that time there wasn't much as far as the sub 250 gram frames and builds. So there wasn't that much options as far as electronics, you know, small FC, ESCs, and micromotors and propellers. So RotorX was one of the first ones that designed the 11 series type of motor, the small motors. And then for that motor, they also went ahead and designed this type of prop with the T-style mount. So you know, those were the originals. So thanks to RotorX for starting that trend, and now a few years after, these have become pretty popular. Now we have really good electronics, really small FCs, which are just as capable as the larger ones. So everything's been downsized, so now we can have like really light builds, and with this type of motors, these modern motors, and the better props that we have now available, and of course better batteries and all that, some of these 2.5 and 3-inch builds, I've seen them fly. They fly almost as good as the 5-inch quad. If you see them, like you almost can't tell the difference in some of the builds that I've seen. Of course, the 5-inch are going to be much, you know, faster, but these little guys, you know, they keep up, and they fly really well. So if you haven't seen those videos, they're on YouTube. People flying those, it's pretty amazing to see these tiny builds flying so well. So I'll be testing and reviewing these motors. The one based on the Brother Hobby T11407, that one I already tested and reviewed. The video's on the channel. So it's gonna be basically the same performance and the same quality as that one I reviewed. So you can check out that video. A really good option for those of you guys that want to run a very efficient motor for 3, 4, and even 5-inch props on 4S. This motor is pretty good for that. It'll run really well. It's a really good motor. Everybody loves these T1s. The 1306 I'll be running at a later time. I got a whole bunch of motors to test, and this 1306 hasn't been favored lately. Not a lot of people are running 1306s anymore, but still it's a pretty good option to run on 3-inch props. Well, for this KV, 4100 KV, so this would probably only be good for the 3-inch props on 2S and maybe maybe on 3S. So I'll test it at a later time. So the 1107 I'll be testing pretty soon, right after I do this one. So this is going to be interesting test because of the 7mm height of the stator and the high KV. So that's going to be interesting to see how it performs with the 2-inch, 2.5, and 3-inch props on 2S and perhaps even 3S. So this one's the one that I'll be reviewing today. Very interesting format on this motor. So we'll see how it performs. Alright, so this is the new motor from RotorX, RX1404. Comes in a bag and just a set of mounting screws, M2 size by, it looks like M2 by 5. And as you can see, pretty minimal bell, only 2 spokes. So I guess that's to save weight, and they went with the naked bottom, so that's pretty good. That'll save some weight as well. Wires, it looks like they're 24 gauge wires and about 100mm length of wire, so that should be plenty for most 3-inch frames to get to the center mounted ESCs if you're using a 4-in-1. Pretty good construction from RotorX. There's not that much information as far as what material they're using, if it's 70-75 aluminum or if it's just standard 60-63, I believe is the other one, or 60-61, I forget. But you know, in this size, because of the overall low weight of a build, even the standard aluminum should be okay to survive most crashes. Alright, so let's measure the motor weight. That's with 100mm of wire as it comes from the factory. So that weighs in at 8.5 grams. And if we cut the wire so that they're only 50mm of length, then we'd be removing about half a gram. So altogether the motor would be about 8 grams with 50mm of wire. So pretty reasonable weight. We'll keep those ultralight micro builds pretty light. So pretty interesting motor with rather low kV, so I guess that's aimed for 3-inch and maybe 2.5-inch props, working on 2S and 3S and maybe even 4S for this low kV. Let's take it apart and we'll check it out on the magnifying glass to get a closer look. Alright, so here's the stator, and as you can see they used a single strand wire, and one interesting thing is that they're using Y termination for the windings. So what that is all the three phases are connected into a neutral. This is called the neutral, where all the three wires from the three phases get connected to each other, and the other ends are the motor leads. So the reason to do that is that for the same winding, if you terminate it in Y, you end up with about 1.7 lower kV, but you also end up with about 1.7 higher torque. So it looks like RotorX went for the slightly lower kV and higher torque so that they can match this well to a 3-inch prop, 2.5 and 3-inch prop most likely. So looks pretty good. Like looks like they're really making motors purposeful to match a certain size of propeller. So that's pretty interesting. Another thing you can see is that some attention to detail is you can see some epoxy there used for the motor leads. So that's pretty good. That relieves stress on the wires, so you don't end up breaking them at those points there from too much movement. The height of the stator, so yeah, it looks like it's 4 millimeters. No surprises there. Nominal height, and overall pretty well constructed, I would say. Most motors these days are very nicely wound and very well constructed, so this is no exception. And here's the bell, a very minimalistic bell. As you can see, they went for very try to make it light, only 2 spokes right there. That's a 1.5 millimeter shaft, and as usual with this size motors, it's just pressed in through that through the bell. And magnets do look a little bit chunky. I don't know, kind of nice thickness to the magnets. And there's not much information on, as I said, on the motor, so I don't know what type of magnets those are, if they're N48 or N52. No idea. Let's put it together, and you can see there the air gap is pretty good. Not extremely close, but not that loose either, so that should help with performance of the motor. And as you can see, the relative thickness of the magnets is pretty, they look pretty thick in this size motor. So alright, let's put it to the thrust stand and let's see what this motor can do.
All right, so let's look at the thrust test results for the RotorX RX1404-3600KV. The motor came in at 3,675 kV, so just slightly higher than the stated kV of 3,600. So pretty good right there. So I went ahead and tested on 3S, on 4S, since that's the spec voltage for this motor. And also because of the somewhat low kV, so that matches best with 3S and 4S. Per the motor's description on the manufacturer's page, they're aiming this motor at 3-inch prop mainly for 3S and 4S operation. And also, as you saw on the teardown, they terminated it on a Y configuration. So the stator is being wired in Y configuration. That's done to get a little bit lower kV for the amount of copper in the motor, and lower kV but also a little bit higher thrust. And as I mentioned before, the factor is about 1.7 if you go in Y configuration versus delta configuration. So they were purposely aiming for lower kV with higher torque. So that's to spin the 3-inch props, particularly this new prop that RotorX has come up with, the 3044T. As you saw at the beginning of the video, it has a wide cord on each of the blades. So that one definitely needs a motor with decent torque to spin it. So I imagine that prop match with this motor, once in flight, it should work really well because of the torque of the motor. So should be a good match. And also one of the purposes of this motor, as I was reading there, is that they were going for efficiency. So not just all out power, but also efficiency. So those are the main goals of this motor, match with those 3-inch props. And that reflects on the thrust test results. As you can see, pretty decent numbers for both 4S and 3S. It's not an overwhelmingly powerful motor, but as you see, the efficiency of the motor is quite good actually. You can just see the numbers, very, very efficient. I mean, with these really aggressive props, the larger props, it doesn't even hit 10 amps on my thrust test, whereas most of the motors will go almost twice as much amperage. Of course, the thrust is a little bit on the low side, but they're aiming for efficiency on this motor. So as you can see, I went ahead and tested from 2.5 to 3-inch props. So here are the results. Pretty decent numbers. It's not overwhelmingly powerful, but the efficiency is what's distinguishes this motor from the rest. I think overall pretty good entry from RotorX. As you saw, a very well made motor, and it's been purposely designed to match the 2.5 and 3-inch props on 3S and 4S. So should be a good motor for all those ultralight sub 250 builds. Alright, I hope you find that data useful, and thank you for watching, and until the next video.